Good evening, this is Cinnamon Noir.
And this is the Ramen Shaman.
Welcome to the last episode of Fez. Now, we are not going to technically be finishing this game in this episode, in the sense of getting the ending that Phil Fish wanted you to get. But we are going to get an ending, and one ending is enough. That's my policy. Naturally, I was not a big fan of the Stanley Parable. That game lasted 10 minutes for me. I'm kidding, I never played that shit. Anyway.
Oh, I actually enjoyed
Back
the
to Fez.
Stanley Parable, but I kind of... My problem with the Stanley Parable is... Even... Oh, shit, sorry about that. Even with, all the different endings, I got as many endings as I could.
Really?
And even...
Like until you stopped being able to find them?
I actually looked on a wiki to find all the different ways to get different endings. I played it, I got pretty much all the endings, I enjoyed it, I thought it was clever, and then I had nothing else to get from it.
Right. No replay value.
That's
the trouble with a story-based game.
Well, it's the trouble with a story-based indie game.
Right. Well... To the extent it is story-based, it is less replayable, even in a mainstream game. It's just the mainstream games tend to have a lot of stuff besides story. The more indie it is, the more likely it is to be nothing but a long story.
Yeah.
Especially if you're playing a Twine game. No, but I was going to say, I agree very strongly with Matthew Matosis's... Try saying that 5 times fast. Matthew Matosis's attitude about it, which is... It wears its meta-commentary too much on its sleeve, so that it's not really able to shock you. You know, when the game says it's all about, screwing with you, then when it does it 100 times, it really loses its punch.
Yeah. Well, that can also be a problem for games that have games or any media property that has become known for the twist.
Mm-hmm. So here's a cube full of QR codes. Pointless.
Like something like Spec Ops: The Line.
Mm-hmm. Which has one big twist. That's the way you do it.
It's a couple of twists, but a lot of people know at least most of the more major twists by now.
Don't they happen at almost exactly the same time?
No.
Oh, okay. My mistake. I haven't played the game, so I may be
too much. There's kind of a major twist about halfway through, and then a really big twist right at the end.
Okay. Right at the end? Like the credits roll after it?
Not quite there, but right before the end, I should say.
Roll after it, not roar. God, I'm being weird today. Anyway. No, I mean, like, people talk, for instance, about the meta stuff in Metal Gear Solid, which, of course, has meta right in the name. But what they forget about it is that a little bit of that goes a long way, and that Kojima had just a few bizarre meta elements on top of a fully fleshed out regular story.
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about people taking meta too far, doesn't Kojima himself kind of do that in later Metal Gear games?
He does.
Full disclosure, the only Metal Gear game I've played any significant amount is 5, both parts of it.
What about the Twin Snakes? Didn't you play that on GameCube?
Nope. I played a little bit with you, but, kept dying and gave up on
That's true. That's what happened to me, too, with Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid is one of those games where, people praise it, and I'm like, yeah, it's a great game, amazing game. I never played more than 10 minutes of it, because I can't. Same thing with System Shock 2.
Which is kind of a problem. I mean, it's...
I know.
I swear to God, I keep meaning to stop talking about this, but it's a reason a lot of people give up on the Souls series, and to me, that is a flaw with the series itself, as much as I love those games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, designers want to be themselves, and that's fine, but you just have to be content with a smaller audience that way.
Well, I really do feel that, in spite of in spite of all its flaws, the best element of Dark Souls 2 for me is the fact that it is easier to get into than any other Dark Souls game.
Right. More accessible.
More accessible.
Gives you more possibilities. But of course, that also means more ways to break the game.
Yes.
Because they're the same thing.
Well, it's not just that. It has a gentler barrier to entry. Bloodborne, I mean, you saw me play the intro. That has
Yes, I did.
That has quite a steep barrier to entry.
I mean, the Cleric Beast is just ridiculous.
The Cleric Beast is rough.
It also has to be said that not only is Bloodborne intimidating in terms of difficulty, but, and this isn't unimportant, it also looks really difficult. The aesthetics of it are all extremely overwhelming, and they're designed to make you feel vulnerable.
Yes. Which is true.
So that the Cleric Beast... Sorry, go ahead.
Which is true to at least some degree of most Dark Souls games.
Oh, but it's more true in Bloodborne, because Bloodborne's explicitly horror-themed. I mean, the Cleric Beast is not only very difficult, but it's also so intimidating because it's huge, covers a huge amount of screen real estate, and it's really aggressive.
And it's... One thing about Bloodborne 2 is... It's
Bloodborne 2?
Or
Oh,
Bloodborne
you just hyped
as
me up.
well as... It's pretty intimidating. Coming off, even if you've played every other game in the Souls series, it's still intimidating because it's different.
Right. No, I've heard people say that Dark Souls actually trains you wrong to play Bloodborne.
Kind of.
Because Dark Souls is deliberate, but Bloodborne is more aggressive.
Vicar Amelia
Not
in
slow-paced.
particular, I remember trying to use strategies that worked on similarly proportioned Dark Souls bosses and finding her actively punishing me.
Yeah.
She will, if you try to stick close to her and move around behind her, unless you really know what you're doing, she will actively punish you. She has a lot of different moves to swipe at her rear and sides.
Right. There's one thing that I think is in common for Dark Souls and Bloodborne, which is a certain amount of memorization. You have to learn patterns and exploit them.
Well, Bloodborne also introduces a lot of bosses where the strategy is hit and run.
So, here's an interesting area. You notice what that thing looks like? And you may also hear, if you're wearing headphones, pulses go back and forth between your ears. This is a tuning fork.
Ah.
It is a clue that this is a, not musical, but sound-based puzzle. So this rhythmic series of pulses you're hearing in your ears is a code. To use it, you have to shift left when it says left, and shift right when it says right.
Ah.
There is a perceptible pause so that you can tell what the pattern actually is. It is a short pause, though, which makes it a little tricky. And it doesn't matter how quickly you can do it. You can do it super fast like I just did. But when you solve it, you get a puzzle cube. Or not nega-cube, I keep saying that. Anti-cube. There are several of these tuning fork puzzles in the game. I really like them. They kind of remind me of have you ever played Donkey Kong Country 3?
I have. I don't know that I've ever played a Donkey Kong game.
Really? That's interesting. Anyway, in Donkey Kong Country 3, you have to rescue these banana birds. Don't ask, it's weird. But anyway, to get to them, you have to go to these caves. And in the caves, you have a button matching sequence that's basically Simon Says. And so, that's how you get them out. You also have to memorize a sound pattern. And in that case, it's a series of crystals that emit certain tones. I really love musical puzzles, and I think they're underused in games. Fez does a fairly good job with them. There are actually two kinds of musical puzzles in Fez. But of course, Fez is oriented around codes of various kinds in general, so it makes sense that music would be one of them, since music and math are known to bear a certain affinity.
Which is weird, because I'm reasonably competent with mathematics. Like, I took... You know, like, I actually studied, like, math and finance in college, and...
Yes, I know. I think we had a calculus class together.
But, I've never really had any musical talent at all.
Well, it's an interesting thing. You know, music is connected to math not necessarily in terms of aesthetics, but in terms of theory. So have you ever heard that Pythagoras was the first person to realize that there was a ratio of different string lengths that would give you certain pitches? So he dabbled in music theory along with other things. And there have been mathematicians since then who were not just mythological, who have studied music theory. And also art. You know, one of the most famous mathematicians of the 19th century did a lot of color theory. And Newton himself had a big book about optics, which is one of his most popular. The reason I call Pythagoras mythological is not because he didn't exist, but because a lot of the things attributed to him were probably not invented by one guy. Basically anything that was ever invented by a Pythagorean theorist is attributed to Pythagoras. That was part of their creed. And they were really weird cultists. Basically the world's first hippies. They were vegetarians, they believed in animal spirits.
Huh.
But the bottom line is that you can't trust anything that says that Pythagoras invented it, including the Pythagorean theorem.
Huh.
Didn't know that, huh?
I did not know that at all.
I'm just full of weird-ass facts.
Yeah.
By the way, I wish I came up with that, but I didn't. There was a really fun Let's Play of Paper Mario with Face Guy and Wogturd back from Something Awful, where Wogturd at one point said, "I am just full of retarded-ass facts." And I love that line. Anyway, these things are getting in my way again. It's interesting that these things are not just dark. They show what appears to be a night sky. And I do not know what that's about. You would think if it's just a void, it'd be just black, right?
It seems more, I get the vibe of a sewer. I mean, this is a sewer. But you know what I mean? Like
From the void areas?
What?
I was talking about the void areas.
Oh.
The pitch black ones.
God damn it.
You see stars in them, basically. Or what? No, it's fine. But, you know, you see a black background. This is weird, by the way.
What the?
That whole area will suck you up, but if you jump in the wrong part of it, it sucks you through the side of the pipe.
What the?
So the Gomez looks like his head is being crushed. Anywho. So we're going to head back down here. Back to the brick area. Which is more normal sounding. Even though I have to say, this song for this area, one of my least favorite in the soundtrack.
Uh-huh.
I do not like this song. It's really repetitive, and the sound is really echoey, and it just, like, grinds into your ears. Took me a while to realize I needed to ride that thing all the way up.
I've probably said this before, but I love this elevator concept.
No, it's a great idea. One of the best uses of the shifting mechanic in the whole game. And that really, I think, is part of the value of Fez in general, is that almost all of its mechanics are tied into the one central mechanic of shifting dimensions. Super Paper Mario did a similar kind of thing, and it was pretty good at it. That's one thing I really liked about Super Paper Mario, and that I think the people who wanted another RPG really didn't credit it for, was that some of the 3D shape, you know, mind-bending stuff was really kind of cool.
Yeah.
And it was also interesting to see a world where the fact that those mechanics existed were reflected in the design, which is something that Fez also does. Again, it might seem ridiculous, but Fez does actually remind me more of Super Paper Mario than it does of most indie games. It's just a weird little thing. Anyway, we are headed up to the very top of Bricktown here, which of course involves going into more towers. These towers are some of the weirdest parts in the game, I have to say. Because, you know, there are some areas that look more man-made and some that look more natural, but few of them are this clinical. It did just occur to me that there are mushrooms and rats here, so it's not totally devoid of life. Actually, there's more life here than in the brick area. But somehow still, it feels to me like it's more sterile.
Yeah, it feels very, it feels a bit industrial, actually.
Yeah.
Very industrial.
That just shows you how important color palettes are. Because that feeling comes entirely from the colors being used here. If these things were red instead of blue, it would look like the outside area. It would look like bricks. But this looks more like cinder blocks.
Although the studs on the side of the walls still definitely look like rivets.
That is true. Just occurred to me, it reminds me kind of the Oh, and I completely screwed this up. This is going to sound weird. So in Kill La Kill, the anime, I don't know if you've seen it.
I've heard of it. I don't think I've seen it.
Most of the plot takes place in this big school, which appears to be built into the side of a battleship based on the aesthetics.
Uh-huh.
And it's basically this one big town built on a hill where everything in it is militarized. Oh, so finally I get how to get up this thing. You can't actually climb up when you're facing the ladders directly. You need to position them so that you can climb from the side. Anyway, so this school, it's all military themed, and it's very strong. The organization of it is very strongly based on the Japanese Navy around the time of World War II, you know, the Showa period. So there's a lot of this kind of aesthetic, you know, rivets, sheet metal everywhere, and everything is just blue.
Huh.
It's a very oppressive-looking environment in that show.
Yeah, that would
One reason I didn't entirely like it, although it did give it a sense of style.
It also brings to mind Rivet City from Fallout 3.
Oh, yeah. I haven't really played Fallout 3 myself, so I don't think about that much.
I played
but I have seen it.
Ridiculous amount of Fallout 3 back in 2009.
Yeah.
Probably
Well, that was
not as
back...
much as New Vegas. I think I have played over 600 hours of
Whoa.
New Vegas, and that's
nuts.
just what Steam's recorded. 674. Yeah.
That is nuts, and I speak as a guy who played 2 playthroughs of Tales of Symphonia, each of which will end up to 120 hours.
Wow.
But, now what can I say? And you get into a game, you play a lot of it.
Well, I've gotten out of and into it multiple times. But
I was going to say, I understand you're playing Fallout 3 that much because that was back at a time when sandbox games were a little harder to come by.
A little, yeah.
It wasn't the standard boilerplate for tons of new games. It was fresh and new, and like all fresh and new things, it went stale.
Yep.
And in my opinion, it's stale right now, but you know, that's just my opinion.
A little bit.
It's just a game theory.
I do kind of feel like Bethesda don't quite know what to do with it.
Well, they've been basically redoing the same stuff over and over again. Or stripping things out.
They've definitely been trying different things, and some of them work and some of them really don't.
Right. Well, I think we can at least agree that there's one thing that they have discovered definitely doesn't work, and that is using VATS in a multiplayer game.
Yeah, VATS without any sort of time dilation mechanic is a terrible idea.
It's not even VATS. I mean, the whole point of VATS is supposed to be that time stops.
One could argue that not hiring Obsidian writers is also a terrible idea, but let's not go there.
Well, you can't use Obsidian writers for everything. Because then games would be good. But
yeah.
No, what I mean is you can't do it because there's a limited amount of their time.
Well, the point is, they contracted New Vegas for one game, or Obsidian for one game, that's New Vegas,
right.
Which is generally considered by fans, including me, to be probably the best. I might actually consider it the best Fallout game.
The best Fallout branded product? Yeah, I'd agree.
Like, Fallout 1 and 2 had their own sort of unique charm, but
they have the System Shock 2 problem of belonging to a past that is full of decisions that now seem very difficult to wrap your head around.
They have a lot of... They are both deeply flawed and really weirdly unbalanced in many ways.
Right.
And just have too many flaws of that sort of CRPG.
So I don't know why I'm using this warp here, because we really have no reason to go here. Actually, since we've got 32 cubes, we are now going to head for the end of the game. This is the end game now. So it turns out I actually lied about a few things. I must have been thinking of what I did after this playthrough. We did not figure out any codes, and we didn't use them. Sorry to say. If you want to figure out the Tetris code, I recommend playing this game yourself. It's a lot of fun. But we are just going to finish up now. We are going to go back to the cube door. Because we've got all the doors. We have everything we need to enter, and I think we all know that that means that we can deal with anything that's beyond the door. If you can get in, you can do it. That's the way I look at it. So let's prop this baby open. Surely the fact that this is an ancient artifact in a place full of people who speak a language we don't even understand will not cause any problem.
I'm getting a end of Spelunky vibe actually.
But this is a stargate, interestingly enough.
Shit.
Not the Roland Emmerich kind, just a basic Stargate. And we're having some Dolby surround sound music in here. And it's transporting us to another time and place. Like most ancient artifacts, this is 3D. Oh, and Gomez is so bored by this, he's just fallen asleep. He's not impressed.
This makes me think of those introductions to Dolby surround sound.
Yeah, I think I just said that.
Oh,
Anyway. The audience is now deaf. Oh, wow. Great. I think we made the right decision coming to this place.
Welcome to Zen.
We could live here. I mean, it looks perfectly natural, doesn't it?
Is that how it's pronounced? Zen?
Yeah, it's called Zen. The word is actually pronounced in-game. The G-Man says it. Thanks to you, the border world Zen is now under our control. Boy, this is a long intro sequence. What is this, No Man's Sky? At least there's no one shooting at me while this happens.
No, at least you're not constantly running out of resources.
That's true.
I never.
In this game, there's only one resource.
Played No Man's Sky, to be fair, so.
In this game, there's only one resource, and the fact that I don't have enough of it is entirely my fault. But I'm sure that'll cause no problems. I mean, when you assemble half a cube, surely it can do all the things that a normal cube can't do. Oh, and here's me falling my death in slow motion, because I haven't quite figured out the mechanics yet. So this area basically has moon jump mechanics. You jump really slow and really high. Low gravity. You also need to climb on top of these squid things in order to get purchase. I don't know if these are organisms, and they just, like, have a very subdued sense of time, so that they don't appear to move to us. But they're definitely very unusual. And the surface that we see behind us is also very moon-like. I mean, this whole area just looks like the moon. I'm also sure you've noticed that in addition to there being squids to jump on, this whole area is shaped like a giant squid.
Yeah, I did know.
Which is funny, because squids were not even mentioned up to this point. There were only owls. I'm a little worried we may be talking to Great Cthulhu in a moment here, but...
Yeah, I was getting sort of that vibe in all this.
Is he a squid or an octopus? I've forgotten.
I think it's closer... You know, I'm trying to think. My impression was closer to a squid, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Actually, I can't even tell if these things are squids, because they only have 3 legs. This makes them a tripod, or something like that. Not the ones from, why can't I remember the name? The H.G. Wells story.
Although that bird at the top is uncharacteristically cute.
Shoot, Greg, help me out here. What's the name of the H.G. Wells short story where aliens invade the Earth?
The War of the Worlds?
Yeah, War of the Worlds. There are tripods in War of the Worlds, but those are not the same thing as this.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, we just entered like a space gate. And now we're going to have a 2001 A Space Odyssey style freak out.
Including reversed colors.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Don't be so negative, Greg.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, I don't know if you remember from the beginning, we saw all these cubes show up. And now we're going to see the cubes show up again. The regular cubes appear blue because it's negative, and the anti-cubes appear yellow, like the normal ones are.
Oh.
And we only have half. Oh, shoot. Apparently, getting here without the right number of cubes, like, breaks something? Like, maybe reality? Oh,
Yeah.
dear. Well, that wasn't good. We may have doomed the entire Earth. It's not too much of a problem, though, because Earth rebooted itself.
You know, this... I said this at the beginning of it. At the beginning of the series, I think, that this kind of thing was a lot more clever and original before Undertale kind of won.
Ruined it?
Well, they did it it was done very well in Undertale, but it's kind of been ruined for everything else since then.
Yep. So, welcome to Fez, everybody. We're starting a new playthrough right now. This is our main character. He's named Gomez. And here's him walking around his town. This is just a totally new playthrough. You can't talk to anyone, though, which is a little unusual.
Huh.
And there's this weird fuzziness. I don't know if you've noticed, but things are getting kind of pixelated-y.
Okay,
Oh, dear.
This is giving me a Doki Doki vibe now.
This isn't right.
Yeah.
This is a bit like Undertale. You can't really reload the game because you broke it. That's definitely a concept that... I'm trying to get to the top here, but I can't. Here we go. I'm finally getting to the top.
I wonder if it
But, of course...
pixelates is this at the same rate as you go up.
No. It pixelates the same no matter what you do. But there's no geyser up there either, which is another odd thing. You know, it's funny, it just occurred to me one of my first videos actually ended with a pixel wipe in very much this fashion. And so eventually we're reduced to just 2 blinking objects. And then they're not blinking anymore because they're real. And then we dive into the Fez. And there's like a whole world in here.
Okay.
A world of red. What is this, like an Eve Klein painting? And then it turns into Far Cry Blood Dragon. Very fun game. Everyone loves that game. Then it turns into the credits from Brass Eye. Yeah, I have to say, this ending is a little pretentious.
A little bit, although I'm getting a moon from the Earth from the moon kind of vibe from this.
Yeah. So, welcome to this Let's Play of Super Hexagon. Hope you'll enjoy it. No, I do like the op art aesthetic of this ending, even though, like the game, its story doesn't really have a point or make any sense.
Yeah.
And we have just 3 lines stretching into eternity.
So
And of course they're going to turn to a cube, because that's what always happens.
seems somewhere between Acid Trip and Winamp Visualizer.
It is a lot like Winamp Visualizer. But I think what they were going for was very much like 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yes.
A case in point, it's full of stars.
Except without any
Actually,
real meaning. Except
for a minute that looked more like the little shapes you see when you press on your eyelids when you
that
close
looks like asteroids. I mean,
The Vectrex, yeah. Vector graphics.
but the thing is, 2001: A Space Odyssey actually kind of did have a point.
I disagree. I think the ending of 2001: A Space Odyssey was equally pretentious. If you can give it the benefit of the doubt and say that that whole weird sequence in the White Room had a meaning, then I think you can read meaning into this.
Fair enough.
But that's just a theory. Anyway. This kind of looks like the trench run from Star Wars. Return of the Jedi, specifically. Then another white cube. I mean, really, at this point, it's getting a little bit predictable.
Yeah.
Everything becomes a cube eventually. And then it turns black, and it turns out the blackness was just Fez... Sorry, I got it wrong. Gomez's eye.
What the fuck?
So, everything's fine, actually. No problem. Gomez can keep on living, and he gets a snazzy drum set to play with the Playtronic logo on it.
Okay then.
Okay, so, what actually happens is that you get to keep playing, but the game wants you to find the rest of the cubes. So, even though I don't show it here, what you get for getting New Game Plus, basically, is a set of magic sunglasses, which is pretty cool. And you can use those to see things from a first-person perspective.
Huh.
Which changes a lot of the rooms and reveals puzzles and clues you might not have seen before. That helps you figure out things like the codes in the game.
Fair enough. I was actually
But we are not going to see that here.
Sorry, I was going to guess that it was going to be a New Game Plus, but I didn't know they'd actually call it New Game Plus mode.
Oh yeah. This game is nothing if not self-aware.
Fair enough.
Like literally, if it wasn't self-aware, it would be nothing.
True.
But no. We'll just leave Gomez to his happy little life. And this is it for this playthrough. Again, if you want to finish it, buy this game. It's definitely worth playing.
Fair enough.
Don't avoid buying it just because Phil Fish is an asshole.
You know,
And
I was going the entire playthrough without making snarky comments about him, so I'm glad you did it.
Well, I won't be more specific. Good night, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Goodbye, everybody.